Hello there, welcome to Blitz Transmissions. I'm Tommy. There's a new Vintage Collection fan poll on the scene right now. It is the Vintage Collection Galactic Conquest. If you're not familiar with what Galactic Conquest is, it is the first annual Vintage Collection fan poll that I am running. I have to give a shout out to MuffinMan27 on Instagram, who first reached out to me a couple months ago with the idea, and I really loved it, so of course we put it into motion. Galactic Conquest is more of a focused and themed event for the Vintage Collection community. The goal of Galactic Conquest is to give a highlight to army builders and military leaders from the Star Wars universe that we want in the Vintage Collection line from the major military factions. A lot of times these army builder and officer type releases are very high reuse, and that is something that SWTVC's March Madness, the biggest Vintage Collection poll that's been going on since 2020, tends to stay away from. That poll is much more focused on characters that would require new tooling. And that's where Galactic Conquest comes in. This poll is really meant to complement March Madness, giving more of a spotlight to those high reuse troop builders and their military leaders. As of the release of this video, where I'm sharing with you guys my 25 picks for the Vintage Collection Galactic Conquest, the submission phase is almost over. Submissions are closing on Saturday, June 20th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time here in the US. At the top of the description below, you will see links for the template where you can share your My 25 picks, as well as the submission form where you can actually go into the Google form, a lot like some of the other major Star Wars action figure fan polls that go on throughout the year, and you'll be able to submit your 25 picks and get your vote counted. So if you want to get your voice heard and maybe get some of your most wanted characters from military factions of Star Wars into the 32 character bracket, which will be coming out at a later time, make sure to submit yours using the link below. So let's get into it. Let's talk about my 25. Now, I have a couple themes for the 25 picks that I chose. First, obviously, all 25 picks are almost entirely Clone Wars era picks. Of course, me being a Clone Wars kid, that's my favorite era in Star Wars. It's what I grew up with. That's obviously what I'm going to gravitate towards. This being my 25, it is completely biased to what I personally want most from the Vintage Collection, from the major military factions, and I would encourage that you do the same with your My 25. Another thing that I should mention too is that a lot of the characters that I chose for mine complement the upcoming HasLab Republic gunship. A lot of these are very high reuse, and some are even just repaints of existing sculpts and tools that the Vintage Collection already has, and of course a lot of them are made to complement that gunship. The HasLab gunships that I got are going to be a huge focus of my display going forward, so of course I'm going to be campaigning for more releases that coincide with those. So let's just hop right in, and my first pick for my 25 is going to be a Separatist army builder, the Super Battle Droid. The Super Battle Droid is in desperate need of an update in the Vintage Collection, and it is a figure that I would probably buy way too many of. I definitely want a lot of these guys, especially if I want to recreate some 2003 Clone Wars Micro Series battles. Super Battle Droids a lot of times are even more predominant than the regular B1s. The Super Battle Droids were also one of my favorite CIS designs from my childhood, so for me, this is definitely one that I would love to see. I think it's safe to say this figure is coming sooner than later in the Vintage Collection, with the recently released Mercenary Guard Droid and also the Battle of Geonosis being such a big deal right now for 2026. So I want to believe that he's coming out, but I still wanted to include him on my list nonetheless. Of course, there are new tooling aspects to this pick, but there are a lot of ways that you could reuse this tooling for especially repaints that are in universe from either the Clone Wars or video games, you name it. So I think this is a really great option to go with. Now for my next several picks here, these are all coming from the second Battle of Geonosis from the Clone Wars. Now while Hasbro does have their Battle of Geonosis program going on, that seems to be just tied to the initial appearance of the gunships in the Geonosis arena during episode 2 Attack of the Clones. So I wanted to give a spotlight to several characters that I would love to see from the second Battle of Geonosis, which to me is even cooler than the theatrical battle. Of course, going with a named character first, I want Clone Commander Jet in the Vintage Collection line. This guy would be almost entirely a reused figure. The only new parts you would get out of this guy would probably be his helmet and maybe his pauldron. Aside from that, TVC already has pretty much all of this guy's character design existing in the line. Him being Ki-Adi-Mundi's clone commander, I think he's just a super unique, cool design that ties right in with that Geonosis theme. Another one here from the Second Battle of Geonosis, but he also shows up plenty of other times in the early seasons of the Clone Wars. It's Clone Commander Gree in his Phase 1 look. Again, this is a figure that we already have the entire sculpt for. The only new piece that I would want to see is the bandolier overlay they could include that slings over his shoulder. Gree has some great screen time in the early seasons of the Clone Wars, and he is present for a few moments in the Second Battle of Geonosis arc, so I would love to get him to add to the collection. Now, briefly jumping away from the Second Battle of Geonosis, this next one here is purely because of my father, Commander Bly himself. Of course, I'm going to be putting the Phase 2 look for Commander Bly on here. Now, this character would again be entirely reused tooling, except for, once again, that helmet, because of course he does have those macro binoculars, which I would hope would be adjustable on the actual figure, and could also be reused for plenty of other clone designs. I think Bly is a no-brainer option, and I know that a lot of Vintage Collection collectors are looking to complete the Revenge of the Sith clone commanders, so I think this is definitely one a lot of people would be on board with. Now, jumping back into the Second Battle of Geonosis, my next pick is going to be Clone Trooper Buzz. Clone Trooper Buzz is a member of the 41st Elite Corps that we see a few different times in the Second Battle of Geonosis arc. The first time he has a Z6 rotary cannon, and the second time he meets an unfortunate demise with Luminara when they stumble upon the Geonosian Queen's Hive. Buzz is just a super cool design, a really cool Clone Trooper repaint, and I would love to see him put into some sort of multi-pack with another character, that being Clone Trooper Draw. Clone Trooper Draw is a really cool Clone Trooper action figure that actually did get made in the animated 375 Clone Wars line back in the day, and he's again just super cool. He's a blink and you miss it clone, but he's got a really cool paint design. Another member of the 41st Elite Corps, I think he'd be a great repaint option, especially, like I just said, in a 2-pack with Buzz. Jumping away from clones for just a moment, my last one coming from the Second Battle of Geonosis is, of course, probably in my opinion the coolest clone design from that arc, that being the 212th ARF Troopers, or as they're also named in the Battlefront 2 2017 title, the 212th Recon Division. These troopers are, yet again, almost entirely reused, with the ARF Trooper helmet being the only piece of new tooling they would receive. While a lot of people think that the paint apps would be very complex on these guys, it's really just 2 colors. You could do the lighter or darker brown as the base plastic color for the armor, and then do the other color as the paint app for the armor pieces themselves. Of course, getting the ARF Trooper helmet sculpt into the Vintage Collection line would open up so many doors to so many other new characters and figure designs for the TVC lineup, but I think this is a great army builder that Hasbro could go with that I would certainly buy a ton of for a Battle of Geonosis diorama display. Now we're going to move away from the clones a little bit. I can get a little obsessive when it comes to the clone troopers. They are, of course, as my hoodie says, a better class of soldier, but of course we need some tinnies for them to fight. So another troop builder pick that I have here is the Droideka. The Droideka is definitely one that would require an all new sculpt head to toe, but I definitely think that it's one a lot of collectors would be on board with getting. The Droidekas show up in multiples almost exclusively throughout all the movies and shows that they're in, so a lot of collectors would be in on more than one of these, and much like the Super Battle Droid, there are lots of repaint opportunities for the Droideka. Using the Droideka, there are also even other partial tools for other different variants that you could make that show up mostly in the Clone Wars show. The Droideka is, in my opinion, an essential part of the Battle of Geonosis, whether you're looking at the second battle from the Clone Wars or the first battle from Attack of the Clones, and I think that it would help to complete that Geonosis arena scene. Now, I said earlier that the Super Battle Droid was one of my favorite Separatist designs, and until the Clone Wars came out, it was my favorite. However, the Clone Wars introduced a new type of droid that I would love to see as a troop builder, that being the Commando Droid. The Black Series got Commando Droids a year or two ago now, but the 375-inch scale got them way back in the day in the animated Clone Wars line. They were really well articulated, and to this day, I think they're some of the most well articulated figures in the 3 3/4-inch scale. Commando Droids would be such a cool addition to the Vintage Collection line. I would buy a complete squad of them for sure. In between video games and the Clone Wars itself, there are several more repaint opportunities for this droid. Once again, as you can see, even when I'm suggesting new tooling for a lot of these characters, there are many repaint opportunities on top of the fact that they are army builders. Now, moving away from the Separatist droid forces and moving over to a separate Separatist army, we have the Separatist-aligned Umbaran soldiers. The gunship landing on Umbara is probably one of the coolest war scenes in the entire Clone Wars show, and the Umbarans are a ruthless enemy that the 501st has to face against. The Umbarans would be a great army builder, again, requiring quite a bit of new tooling, but I think that there are enough collectors out there that would buy these in mass, especially for collectors that have a ton of Phase 2 501st clones, especially like I have. I could load up my clones on the gunship and have them unloading, getting ready to take down some Umbarans. Keeping with the Separatists still, the droids of course need someone to command them, so this is one that I think would be very versatile. It is the Tactical Droid. The Tactical Droids made for some really good minor villains in the earlier seasons of the Clone Wars, where we needed to give Grievous or Ventress a little bit of a break from getting beaten by the good guys all the time, and this would be a figure that there are so many different repaints you could make out of it. There are so many unique looks for the Tactical Droids, especially in the first couple seasons of the Clone Wars, that I think going with any of them would be a great inclusion and something that a lot of fans would be on board with. Now we're up to number 12 of my 25, so we're reaching about that halfway point. Let's jump back into some clones, shall we? So my next pick here is going to be Arc Commander Hammer. Arc Commander Hammer is the oftentimes forgotten clone commander of the Rancor Battalion. A lot of people forget about him or get him confused with Clone Commander Colt. However, he does show up in just a couple shots towards the end of the defense of Camino Arc. Now for me, I would like Arc Commander Hammer to be consistent with the other three commanders. So whether they put him out single carded and keep him on that old ARC Trooper sculpt, which definitely isn't as good as the current Clone Trooper sculpt for the Vintage Collection line, I would like for them to either do that or release all four commanders in a multi-pack on a newer updated sculpt. Moving on to another troop builder for my 25, we're going with one that might be a little bit of a head scratcher to you until I explain my logic. It's going to be the Phase 2 212th Clone Trooper. Now you may be saying, Tommy, we just got a multi-pack of those guys just a couple years ago. Why are you asking for an updated version? It's because since that multi-pack came out, Hasbro moved to the swappable head options for the Phase 2 clones as opposed to the removable helmets. Those older Phase 2 clones with the removable helmets are plagued with bobble-headed looks, and I've been so happy with all the clone releases that Hasbro has put out with the newer swappable heads that are much more proportionate to the rest of the body. I also would love to buy some sort of multi-pack or even single-carded version of a 212th where I wouldn't have to also army build the Phase 2 look for Waxer, so I would love to get these troopers updated and back out into the TVC line. Just this year, we've already gotten the 212th Airborne out for the first time since 2007 in the 3 3/4 scale, and a new Commander Cody just revealed, so I think getting out a 212th Clone Trooper soon would be a really good logical next step for the Vintage Collection line. Speaking of the 212th, let's go back to the Phase 1 looks, and again, kind of the Battle of Geonosis from the Clone Wars with Clone Commander Cody in his Phase 1 look. Getting this version of Commander Cody would give us another new helmet sculpt for TVC, and I think that it would be a great way to incorporate other characters that have very similar looks like Phase 1 looks for Commander Fox. Commander Cody also has a ton of screen time in his Phase 1 look for a ton of different character arcs in the early seasons of the Clone Wars, and I think he would just be a no-brainer pick. Now moving on to a really unique Separatist leader that I think would be really good for the Vintage Collection line, a very unique release, it is Admiral Trench. I'm gonna go specifically with his Clone Wars Season 6 look. Admiral Trench is a super cool minor villain in the Clone Wars, and he shows up from beginning to the end of the Clone Wars timeline, and I love especially in the latter seasons where he has that half robotic look to his face, and even half of his arms are droid arms. I think he'd just be a super unique silhouette for the Vintage Collection and a really cool alien species to add to the line. Now of course, how could we call this Galactic Conquest and have the droid army be a part of this without including the droid general as available for submission? So I have General Grievous on my submission list. General Grievous is a staple of the Clone Wars era, whether it's his badass look in live action from Revenge of the Sith or his absolutely overpowered stark white animated Clone Wars look. This character is one that I think definitely could use an update, and with the current tech Vintage Collection has, I think they could really get us a nice posable version of General Grievous with maybe even some swappable arms for that four-armed look. This is obviously a little bit of a pipe dream, as a lot of the tooling here is pretty one and done for TVC, unless of course they do a repaint from the 2003 Clone Wars, but ultimately I think this is a character I'd be really happy to add to my collection. But ultimately I think Galactic Conquest is the perfect kind of pull for General Grievous. Surprise, we're jumping back to another clone trooper. It's going to be the Phase 1 look for Captain Rex. We've got the early seasons Anakin, we've got the Phase 1 501st first clone troopers. We're about to get some new Phase 1 clones in a multi-pack soon. We need Captain Rex in the Vintage Collection line. I would love to have him for a second Battle of Geonosis display, or just leading a bunch of my Phase 1 troopers on any battlefield. He's a main character in the show. We just recently got his Phase 2 look, technically from the Bad Batch a couple years back, and I think that it is about time to get a newly tooled Phase 1 Rex in the Vintage Collection. Now for my next pick, this is the only character out of my 25 that is not directly from the Clone Wars era. This is a troop builder that I think is desperately needed in the Vintage Collection, and is a figure that I can't believe hasn't been made yet. It is the TK Trooper. There have been so many different animated series with the TK Troopers involved, whether it be their first introduction in the Bad Batch, or Tales of the Underworld, or Maul Shadow Lord. We keep seeing these guys over and over again, and especially seeing them on the Republic gunships with 11th Brother and Marok in Maul Shadow Lord. I decided that I need a ton of these guys to fill up one of my gunships with. Again, new tooling needed for this character, but it's a no-brainer army builder for most TVC collectors, and there are even several different iterations of the character, whether it's commanders wearing different colored pauldrons, or even some repaints with the Shock Trooper variants we saw at Grand Moff Tarkin's base in the Bad Batch. You thought we were done with clones? You were wrong, because the next several picks on my 25 are, surprise, even more clone troopers. The next one here is going to be another troop builder coming from Revenge of the Sith, that being the Kashyyyk Trooper, otherwise known as the 41st Elite Scout. He has several different names the fandom has given him. I refer to him as the Kashyyyk Trooper. This figure shares a lot of the same design and armor as the Galactic Marine, and if we get this guy, we get a lot of the tooling necessary for the Galactic Marine. He's another great army builder that would do really well for the Vintage Collection, in my opinion. I personally would get a whole squad of them, and I would love to see these guys be added to the Vintage Collection lineup. Now moving back to animation, once again, we have another clone trooper pick. This one's technically an army builder. I don't think you'd army build this as much as like a legion of clones, but I could see a lot of people buying multiple of these. It is the Phase 2 look for the clone pilots from the Clone Wars. This version of the Phase 2 pilots is kind of a mesh between the Phase 1 looks that we see in Attack of the Clones and in the earlier seasons of the Clone Wars, and then the ones with the exposed face masks that we see a lot more in Revenge of the Sith. I really like this design. It is one of the most striking designs, and again, there are so many repaints, there's so many named clones that share this new helmet sculpt that would need tooled, and I think that getting these pilots out would be a great complement to the HasLab Republic gunship. Now for my next three picks, these are definitely beating a dead horse. If you're anywhere familiar with the TBC community, you're probably going to be rolling your eyes when you see these flash up on screen. The first one is Tech from his Season 7 Clone Wars Season 1 Bad Batch look. Of course, you already could probably guess what the next two picks are going to be. I'm going to gloss over these because we as a community have definitely beaten the dead horse on how bad we want these. Crosshair is one of my favorite figures from 2025 for the TVC, and I think that they need to follow up with the rest of the team. Tech obviously being my favorite member, I want him a little bit more than Wrecker. Wrecker is a bigger figure, once again would be super cool. These guys would require, again, quite a bit of new tooling, but there are even a couple repaint opportunities with these guys from their different looks throughout the different seasons of the show, especially Wrecker. He has like 4 different looks that are almost entirely the same armor set from beginning to end of the show, so I think he'd be a no-brainer, and I know people would love to get him. And let's of course not forget about Echo. I love Echo's design, especially from Season 1 of the Bad Batch. He would be such a cool figure to get, and again, beating the dead horse on the Bad Batch. Enough said about that. Hasbro, please, we need the Bad Batch finished in the Vintage Collection. Moving on to the second to last pick for my 25 for Galactic Conquest. Now, my last two picks are showing how fun the submissions are meant to be. Your My 25 picks and the entirety of Galactic Conquest ultimately are about having fun. It's not about making the most logical choice. It's not about making the list that you think could be better for the TVC line as a whole. It's what you want most. And you know what I want a lot in the TVC line? A dwarf spider droid. The dwarf spider droids show up in the first Battle of Geonosis, the Clone Wars movie, and tons of different arcs in the Clone Wars show. These guys seem really big, but all said and done, aside from the actual dome, they aren't much bigger than the droidicas are. Yes, their legs are very wide, but they're very spindly, and I feel like if Hasbro found a way to detach them from the body and articulate them well, that this figure really wouldn't cost more than a deluxe TVC release. The dwarf spider droid is just such a cool, unique design from the prequel era, and I think would really help to buff out the silhouette, especially if you had some of these going up against your Republic gunships for a display. And finally, of course, we're saving the best for last, it is Colonel Meeber Gascon. Colonel Meeber Gascon would be such a silly little release for the Vintage Collection line. I imagine he would probably be similar in size to Grogu or the Anzellans, maybe even a little bit smaller. But I think maybe including him with like a D-Squad multi-pack or a Gregor single pack release, I just feel like it would be fun. This is such a unique and cool character, such a unique member of the Republic military. I feel like he would just be such a highlight for my collection and many other Clone Wars kids collections as well. But with that, that wraps up my 25 for the first annual Vintage Collection Galactic Conquest. Once again, I'll remind you, submissions close Saturday, June 20th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So once it hits the stroke of midnight and it becomes Sunday, June 21st, submissions will be closed. And I will remind you guys again as well, the links for both the template, if you want to share your picks on social media, like a lot of our friends have already online, or if you want to submit your 25 on the Google form we are using to compile all the data, you can find both those links at the top of the description below. Muster your troops and conquer the galaxy with the Vintage Collection Galactic Conquest. Stay tuned for more details. Make sure to follow the Blitz Transmissions YouTube channel, follow me on Instagram, and follow MuffinMan27 on Instagram as well. We will have dates to come on when the actual tournament will begin. You guys will get to vote on different matchups based on the voting that you guys put in for my 25. It's not weighted, so it's not like your top pick gets more points to the overall vote than your 25th pick does. It's just 25 of your most wanted characters, whether it be army builders or officers from your favorite Star Wars military factions. But with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you're an ARC Trooper in my Patreon, you would have seen this video early. If you'd like access to early content, monthly giveaways, and other awesome benefits, the link to my Patreon is in the description below. Become an ARC Trooper for just $4.99 a month. If you're a fan of the reviews I do here on YouTube, or you just want to support the YouTube channel more directly, you could also check out my YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion. For just 99 cents a month, it gives you access to exclusive badges, priority replies in my comments section, exclusive emojis, and so much more. If you'd like links to the merch, like this Blitz Transmissions trucker hat I have on right now, and some other cool stuff, you can check out the Blitz Transmissions Armory over on Printify. Link to that, the Discord, and all my social media are in the description below. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.
Breaking off. All units, fire at will. 1-2, pick a target. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. You've got to hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit.